Before sunrise, I stood alone in the nursery with two sleeping newborns. The candles barely held back the dark. I looked at one baby, then the other. Then I did something I had sworn before God I would never do. I picked them both up, one at a time, and placed each child into the other's cradle. My hands were shaking, my heart was breaking, and I knew if anyone ever discovered what I had done, I would spend the rest of my life remembered as a traitor. But if I did nothing, I believed thousands of people would die before the next harvest. By the end of this story, you will understand why the hardest decision I ever made was never about choosing between two babies. It was about choosing between two futures. And I am still not certain I chose correctly. To understand why I crossed a line I promised I would never cross, you have to understand who I was before that night. My name is Sister Margaret. I entered the convent at 17 not because I was running from something, but because I genuinely believed that caring for others was the truest form of prayer I knew. For over 2 decades inside the walls of the convent of the Blessed Hollow, I worked in the nursery. I received mothers who came to us frightened, exhausted, sometimes alone. I held newborns on the coldest nights. I washed tiny hands and sang softly in the dark when no one else was there. I truly believed that every life that entered my care carried equal worth. A merchant's daughter and a nobleman's son, a foundling left at the gate and a child born under royal banners, all the same in my arms, all the same before God. I also believed in honesty. Not the easy kind, where telling the truth costs you nothing, the kind that costs everything and you tell it anyway. That belief had never been tested, not really, not until the kingdom of Valdenmoor shook itself apart. King Aldrich III died without warning. A fever took him in 4 days. He left no written decree naming his successor, and that silence, that one terrible silence, cracked Valdenmoor straight down the middle. Two noble houses immediately claimed the throne. House Caravan in the north, led by Lord Edric, a man with sharp eyes and sharper ambitions, and House Sarath in the south, led by Lady Mira, a woman who spoke of justice but surrounded herself with soldiers who spoke only of conquest. Both families had legitimate arguments rooted in old succession laws that nobody had bothered to reconcile for generations. Political alliances collapsed within weeks. Caravans stopped moving between provinces. Farmers began hiding grain. Mothers started keeping their children indoors. The rumors reached us even inside the convent walls. War was not a possibility anymore. Everyone I spoke to believed it was simply a matter of time. That was the world when two women arrived at our convent within the same week. The first was a young noblewoman named Alara. She came quietly, almost secretly, wrapped in a plain traveling cloak, accompanied by only one trusted servant. She told our Mother Superior she needed a safe, private place to give birth. She never said whose child she carried. But I noticed the crest on the inside of her cloak before she folded it away. It was the old royal crest, not Caravan, not Sarath, the original crown crest of the Aldrich bloodline itself. The second woman was a midwife named Tessin, who arrived barely 2 days later carrying an infant she said had been born on the road. She was visibly afraid. She asked if she could leave the child with us temporarily while she sought safe passage out of the kingdom. She stayed one night and disappeared before dawn, leaving a small bundle of documents tucked inside the baby's wrappings. I did not open them immediately. I placed them in my cabinet and tended to both infants with equal care. Alara gave birth 3 nights after arriving. A boy, healthy, strong, quiet. She wept when she held him, but it was not only joy in her eyes, it was fear. She made me promise that no one would know which child was hers until she told me it was safe to speak. I gave her that promise. I gave it freely, never imagining what it would eventually cost me. The night before she planned to leave, Alara suffered a sudden decline, a complication I had seen before and always dreaded. She died before morning, quietly, with her child already sleeping in the next room. I was the only person who knew which baby was hers. That same morning, I finally opened the documents Tessin had left behind. What I found inside changed everything I thought I understood about the succession crisis. There were two letters. One was sealed with Lord Edric's private mark. The other carried the personal signature of Lady Mira's chief counselor. Both letters referenced the same infant. Both letters contained language that made my stomach turn. They were not arguing over who had the rightful claim to rule. They were negotiating over how to use a child's identity, a newborn's identity, as a political weapon. Edric's letter suggested that if the child could be confirmed as a direct Aldrich bloodline heir, his house would immediately push that confirmation as a way to invalidate Sorath's claim entirely. Mira's counselor's letter proposed something worse. If the heir could be quietly removed from public record, Sorath would claim the succession was permanently unresolved and use the legal confusion to justify military seizure of the capital. Neither letter mentioned protecting the child. Neither letter mentioned the child at all except as a piece on a game board. I sat with those letters for a long time, long enough for the candles to burn down, long enough for both babies to wake, cry, and go back to sleep while I tended to them in a silence so heavy I could barely breathe inside it. I had promised Alara secrecy. Alara was gone. The promise had no witness. I could have simply released both children to whoever arrived next and let the political machinery grind forward. But those letters told me exactly what that machinery intended to do. I had seen enough of the world to know that powerful men do not change course because a nun from a small convent asks them kindly. They change course when the thing they are trying to use disappears. And that was when the thought came to me. Terrible and quiet and completely serious. If no one outside this room knew which baby was which, then neither letter could be acted upon. Not immediately, not without confirmation. And without confirmation, both houses would be forced to pause. A pause might be enough. Enough for cooler minds to find another way. Enough for the legal archives I had begun to suspect existed somewhere to surface through lawful channels. Enough for peace to find a door before war kicked the whole building down. I want to be honest with you. I did not feel righteous when I switched those cradles. I felt sick. I felt the full weight of what I was doing to those two children who had no voice in any of it. I told myself I would carry this alone until it was safe to reveal the truth through evidence, through legal record, through people with authority I did not possess. I told myself the switch was temporary. I told myself a lot of things in the dark that morning, and I have lived with the uncertainty of whether I was right ever since. What I did not expect was how quickly my quiet intervention would create unexpected breathing room. Within days, rumors circulated that the convent had received both an unidentified infant and a noblewoman who died without disclosing her child's parentage. Edric's men came. Mira's men came. I spoke to each group with complete calm and told them the truth about everything except the one thing they most wanted to know. I said honestly that I could not confirm identity without legal documentation I did not personally possess. That was not a lie. The documentation I had hidden required verification by a royal archivist, not a nun. What followed was 5 years of extraordinary tension. I watched both children grow. I quietly gathered testimony from 3 elderly servants who had known Alara personally, from a retired royal scribe who confirmed that King Aldrich had left a sealed private document with a church elder in a distant province, and from a midwife's assistant who had witnessed Tessin's original journey and could testify to the child's origins. I wrote careful letters. I traveled twice with permission from my mother's superior to consult with legal scholars. I built a record that no court could easily dismiss. I also watched both boys, and I want to tell you something that still moves me deeply. They were good children, curious, gentle, occasionally maddening the way all healthy children are. They were shaped by the women who raised them, by the work they were given, by the kindness and correction they received, not by blood, not by a cradle, by love and by character. That observation alone changed something permanent inside me about what I believed leadership truly requires. When the royal archivist finally located King Aldrich's sealed document in the 7th year after the king's death, it contained a written succession declaration that predated both houses' claims entirely. The document named a legitimate heir through a line that neither Caravan nor Sorath had known to dispute. It effectively dissolved the conflict's legal foundation entirely. By that time, diplomatic negotiations between the houses had already quietly progressed further than anyone publicly admitted, partly because neither side had been able to confirm the identity they each needed to weaponize. I came forward that year. I told the full truth to the church council, the remaining royal advisors, and the legal tribunal assembled to resolve the succession. I told them about the switch. I told them why. I told them about Edric's letter and Mira's counselor's letter. I handed over every document I had gathered across 7 years. I accepted their judgment without defense beyond the truth itself. They did not call me a traitor. Several of them wept. One elder sat quietly for a very long time before finally saying that I had bought the kingdom time to find its own way back from the edge. He did not say I had done the right thing. Neither did I. We sat together with the weight of that unspoken agreement between us. Both boys were eventually told their full histories when they were old enough to carry it. They were raised with the truth, not as rivals, but as two young men whose earliest years had been spent in the same nursery, cared for by the same hands. They became, against every political expectation, close friends. One eventually served the new administration as a legal counselor. The other built a school. Neither of them became a king. Both of them became something harder to manufacture and easier to lose. They became decent men. I am old now. My hands are slower. The nursery feels quieter. And I have made my peace with most of what I carry, though not all of it. Some choices leave permanent marks, even when they protect people from permanent harm. I have learned that faith does not always mean certainty. Sometimes it means acting on incomplete knowledge and then living honestly inside the consequences. History tends to celebrate the battles, the generals, the swords, and the treaties signed after the bloodshed. But sometimes the greatest victory is the one that keeps the battle from ever beginning. Sometimes it lives in a single quiet room before sunrise, where one person makes a terrible, careful, costly choice and then spends the rest of her life carrying it so that others never have to carry war. I would ask you now, what would you have done in that nursery if every choice in front of you carried devastating consequences? Leave your answer below. I genuinely want to know. And if this story reminded you that true courage sometimes means carrying a burden no one else will ever fully understand, please share it. Someone in your life may need to hear that today.